Male Karen thinks I'm a thief because I have no work uniform, but I'm the manager. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. A little backstory. I was once a male volleyball player for a small high school in Florida a couple years ago, and recently had a situation that reminded me of this story. Now, while I was in high school, I worked at a part-time job at a small sports store. It wasn't part of a chain or anything, but more of a local shop that you could go and hang out at and buy equipment. Me and my friends first came across this place after we joined the volleyball team freshman year. Now, many people may not know about men's volleyball because it's not something you see often, but where I live in Florida, it's a huge deal. And this is the reason I got manager, because not only was I a hard and trusty worker, as the owner put it, but also a volleyball player like he was when he was in high school. I worked at this store up till my senior year, so a lot of people knew me and trusted me to get the equipment they needed. I was manager, so I marked what people requested and asked the owner to make an order. One day, a man and his son, who I would say was about 13, walked in and asked where the football gear was. At first, I looked at the dad with a "are you sure?" expression, because his son looked really small and scrawny. Not what you would expect a football playing kid to look like. But me being the guy I am, assumed the kid was just starting out. So I stood up and pointed to the second aisle in the shop. When I did, this kid looked scared out of his mind. Now, I'm a big guy with a height of 6 feet, and I practice a lot, so I have a bit of muscle. However, I have social anxiety outside of my circle of friends and the usual customers that come to the shop, so I got nervous and sat down. This relieved the kid and made me feel better. After a couple minutes of sitting on my phone, I decided to go to the back real quick to take stock and to fill up some of the shelves with our latest equipment of products. Note, our storage is in plain view of the counter, as to assure us no one goes back there without our knowledge. While I was doing this, I hear shouting come from the front of the store, and someone was going off about, "There's some kids stealing equipment," and "where are the employees?" When I come out to see what the problem is, I see the dad giving me a death glare. He then walked up to me and got in my face to chew me out, asking what I was doing back there, and that "you should be in the front like all the other customers." But when I tried to get my word in the conversation, he would just keep interrupting, saying that he would tell the manager what I was doing and that I was trying to steal equipment for my own selfish self. This is where my social anxiety kicks in, and I start tearing up a bit. Now, a lot of people would say you're the manager, just kick him out. But when a random guy is shouting at you and you have social anxiety, it's kind of hard. Finally, the owner comes out of his office to see what the problem is, and the dad says, "This kid is stealing equipment from you and your employees are nowhere to be seen." I look at the owner with tears in my eyes, and the owner looks at the dad and says, "Sir, this young man does in fact work here." "He has no uniform on." "Sir, we don't wear uniforms." "That's ridiculous. All stores have uniforms." "No, it's not, sir. And no, they don't. Now, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." "Why? I've done nothing wrong." "You've shouted at my employee and caused a huge scene. Now, please leave." The dad then grabbed his son and stomped out in anger, and that was the last I saw of him. Now that I look back, I should have kicked him out, but back then I was scared and a different person than I am now. The owner was always ready to take care of jerks though. I mean, at least the guy in this story had a good intention at heart, and I could understand why maybe he would think that you were stealing something. You're just some young guy with no uniform who's just kind of going in the back area and doing his own thing. At the same time, he did walk in and see you in the front area and asked you where stuff was. Kinda seemed like he already assumed you were an employee, so I don't really know what's going on there. But I totally feel for you on the social anxiety thing. There are situations where you're put on the spot like that and your mind just kind of shuts down. It's not something that's controllable. I am glad to hear it's better for you now. A lot of people who have never had to deal with that level of social anxiety don't understand what it's like to be in a situation like that for someone like you. That it can be completely overwhelming in the moment. Soldier cuts off my uncle's hand and leaves him for dead, so my uncle gets revenge with one hand. I've been really wanting to post this, but unfortunately, I myself have never exacted revenge. At least nothing worth posting, but this I think may be worth sharing. Warning, this contains a story about a Holocaust survivor. This happened to my dad's great-granduncle. I'll just call him Uncle. I never knew him. He died in 1998 when I was about 5 years old. My dad didn't know him very well either. He was kind of reclusive. Uncle was a Holocaust survivor, but he never really talked about it. He never gave a testimony. family, never collected reparations, never went back to his homeland of Ukraine, never sought out if his friends or family survived. He just moved to the US, met up with the family he had there, and started over. Got married, had kids, all the while never saying much other than "I was there." The only reason we know any details about this is because one night one of his sons got him drunk and he spilled the whole terrible story. Later, the son found out that the mother knew a fair amount too. She had fled her native land, which I believe was Czechoslovakia, just as it was being invaded, so she understood to an extent. But after that, he refused to say anything more. The son has been spending the past few years trying to find out more from records and such. I don't know too many details, unfortunately. I only met the son once and I can't even remember his name at all. Uncle was at a concentration camp. Not sure which, but I think the son said it was Dachau, but don't quote me on that. He was in his late 20s. Not more than a day after he got off the train, an officer pulled him aside from the working line and began berating him about being lazy. He then said he needed to make an example of him so the others wouldn't slack off, so took out a cutlass and chopped off Uncle's left hand. The officer told him to get back to work and walked away laughing while Uncle bled out in the snow. The others tried to nurse him and keep him as healthy as they could, but his wounds still got infected, and he was sick and slow a lot. Luckily, the others picked up his work and helped him as much as they could. Apparently, Uncle had said that he had made peace with the fact that he was going to die there and be fed to the dogs. The officer continued to harass Uncle. He looked for any excuse to beat and demean him. It's a wonder he didn't just shoot him. He took away his food, his shoes, had dogs attack him, made him do tasks that required 2 hands and things like that. When the camp was liberated, Uncle went up to a soldier and asked if they had captured any officers. He said they did. He asked if they caught the officer that had tormented him, which he said while he showed the soldier his stump wrapped in soiled bandages. The soldier brought the officer to him handcuffed and had him on his knees. Uncle then, with the soldiers around him, proceeded to choke out the officer with his remaining hand. Evidently, it took quite a while, and apparently one of the soldiers offered Uncle their gun, but he stuck with slowly but surely choking the life out of the man that took his hand and tormented him and countless others. Afterwards, Uncle got a wooden hand, moved to America, got married, and had kids. All the while, whenever someone saw his tattoo or asked him about the war or the camps, he would just show them his wooden hand and say, "I was there, I don't want to go back." I can't imagine the kind of PSD he must have had from that experience. I can't imagine the pain and trauma it caused him. I doubt he ever got any real help either. It seems that he just took it all to the grave. But things like that shouldn't be forgotten, no matter how painful. They should be remembered, so we as people never allow something like that to happen again. I hope he was at least at peace with himself, and at least enjoyed the life he made after that ordeal. Wow, wasn't expecting to get this heavy with it. We all know that there were a lot of atrocities that took place during the Holocaust. I don't think we all need to really sit here and talk about that. But what I will say is that despite everything that your uncle went through, he's one of the lucky ones. He got out alive. There's so many that didn't have that opportunity. He got to go on with his life and get married and have kids and be happy. I'm sure in some way that yes, he did find his peace at least. Karen told my manager that my anxiety was an excuse to be rude to her. This happened the other day at work. Apparently, people just want to make us retail workers cry this week. The next day, a lady got rough with one of my coworkers too. Something in the air, I guess. But anyway, let's talk about the Karen we're here to talk about. I work part-time at a local chain pet store, mostly with the fish section, but I float around the store most slow days. Friday afternoon, pretty peaceful day, nothing out of the ordinary really. Then came in a middle-aged couple with a young toddler into the fish section where I was doing my daily cleaning routine on the aisles. Folks walked by, asked them how they were doing, and said if they need any help to just ask. You know, normal retail sales intro. Seemed pleasant enough. It got worse when they actually needed help though. The Karen did indeed need some help getting some fish. Quite a few actually, so it took a little bit of time to catch them all. Throughout this time catching and placing the fish in the temporary container to move them to the bagged table, the toddler was extremely nosy and had no sense of personal space whatsoever. I have anxiety around kids in general. I don't like to be touched, and I don't really have the programs in my brain to deal with them for long periods of time. At first, I nervously laughed and told the kid to watch out that I didn't accidentally knock him with an elbow or drop water on his head. Reasonable request. request. Kid kept on, then started asking the same questions over and over and over again. Kept wanting me to get other fish that his parents didn't ask for. At one point I said, "You gotta ask your parents about those," or jokingly asked if he was going to pay for them. The kid then started to climb on my ladder away from me, which he shouldn't have been doing, but by all means, get out of my space. Like, I thought I was doing pretty well seeing as I was interacting with this kid and not going completely off my rocker. He even started to touch my shoulders and arms, trying to get me to look at the fish he wanted but wasn't getting, which is a big trigger for me. I hate being touched by strangers. Karen was getting a little irritated that I wasn't acting like a normal woman just drooling all over this child, that she probably thought was being cute. Note that they've only told the kid to get out of my face and space once in this entire 5 to 10 minute interaction, despite my obvious discomfort. Last straw was when the dad, who was cool by the way, took the kid over to another aisle, thank God. But just as soon as he left, he came running back with a net and tried to get in between my legs to try and catch his own fish. He'd even taken the wrapper off it, like he meant business. The dad was running after him, and Karen thought it was cute. I, however, was disassociating already from the stress, trying not to get overwhelmed, and suddenly panicked when he went straight for the open hatch. The lift hatch on this one in question is temperamental and could have easily slammed down on his fingers and hurt him. Softly, in a panicked voice, "Please don't, oh please don't," after which Karen finally grabbed the kid's arm and held him only a short distance away, still in my space, but restrained, I guess. Karen then proceeded to get huffy with me and said, "You don't have kids, do you? You really need to work on your patience with kids." At this point, neither parent had done much to control the kid and hadn't said any kind of negative connotation words like no or even the kid's name. They had just been letting him all up in my space. Being really out of whack now with my anxiety in full gear, I didn't even think about it and replied back, "No ma'am, I don't. I don't really plan on it either since my anxiety makes it kinda difficult to handle kids for long periods of time." Oh, this ticked her off apparently. At this point, I wasn't mentally present. I was just trying to get these people out of my space and not lose my mind. They didn't say a word after this. I handed them their fish bags and told them to have a good day and that there's a 30-day guarantee on the fish. I was just thankful it was over. I've had experiences like this before and have learned to control the anxiety much better working in retail for 2 years. So here I thought it was over and I could relax again. I didn't notice any changes in them, so I wasn't expecting anything to come about after the whole ordeal. Went back to normal, did some breathing exercises to calm my nerves and get centered on reality again. Oh, how I was wrong. At checkout, the lady asked my coworker if she could speak to a manager. Classic Karen behavior. I was far enough away that I didn't hear the interaction, but according to my least favorite manager, the lady went off about how I was rude to her kid. Said I told her I was never having kids ever, and that my anxiety was an excuse to be a jerk to her 3-year-old son, who just didn't know any better. Meanwhile, my coworker said the kid in question had ran over to another customer's dog while Karen was going off and ignoring her precious spawn, which is extremely dangerous, as we have dogs that can be nervous that are going to training classes around the time in question. The second that dog bit the kid, it would have been put down and Karen would have sued. My coworker said the customer with the dog looked at Karen in a "Can you please come get your kid" expression, but didn't want to intervene Karen mid-Karening to avoid her wrath. Meanwhile, I'm back in my happy place talking to the fish and OCD organizing to get my senses back to normal, unaware that I was about to have a meltdown in a minute or two. So least favorite manager comes over and asks me if he can have a quick chat. I said sure and asked what was up. He normally likes to micromanage, so I didn't think it was anything out of the ordinary. He then proceeds to lay it on me that I had a complaint that I was rude, and the lies that the lady had spat about me. Another cool manager walks by and asks what's up. Least favorite manager relays the same info to him. I suddenly lose my cool. I go off and explain that no, I wasn't rude, that the kid had hit every trigger button I had and barely managed to keep calm as it is. I was quietly raging that I just hate kids and I hate parents and everything, and all hell broke loose. I lost it. Everything I had bottled up from the interaction with Karen blew up. Looked at my arm mid-rage and it was shaking like crazy, and I could feel tears coming on. on. Anxiety attack. A bad one. I told them to hold that thought, that I was having an attack and had to go to the back for a bit. Proceeded to lay in the floor of the break room in fetal position for about 20 minutes after taking my real deal chill pills in hopes I could stave it off. Too late though. I couldn't work for another hour while waiting on it to pass. My whole body was flushed. Typical anxiety attack symptoms for me. Coworkers came to check on me. Cool manager asked if I was alright. Coworker that had watched the whole thing took pity on me and came back to bring me a guinea pig as emotional support. I finally calmed down enough to work the last hour. But sure, I totally faked an anxiety attack to be a jerk to a 3-year-old. I mean, I'm not a fan of kids, but I'm not going to be mean to them for no reason. Just learn to control your kids, folks. Good kids I can deal with easily. Bad or no boundary kids set me off. So now I'm getting to where I don't want to help people with kids anymore in fear that they'll try and get me fired over the fact that I interact with kids a little differently than some people. I just talk to them like they're little adults most of the time. If that offends people, I don't think I'm the problem here, jerk. No, you're definitely not in the wrong here. There are boundary issues, and parents are responsible for controlling their kids. Everyone has a limit as to what they can tolerate. Kids tend to push those buttons. With this kid in particular, he's climbing up the ladder behind you and pulling on you and stuff. The whole situation just sounds potentially dangerous. I don't know why you have to be the one to chime in and say, hey, control your kid. You'd think it would be common sense. And the fact that other customers in the store are continuing to have interactions like this with this woman while she's complaining about you should kinda show the manager what's really going on here. It just kinda sucks that Karen ended up going to the manager that you didn't get along with. Maybe if it was any of the other ones, this whole situation would have been approached a little differently and you wouldn't have ended up breaking down. But hey, at least you had your support guinea pig. That's a true friend right there to bring you that. I was almost accused of stealing from the store that I work at. This is a rather funny story and doesn't have any spicy things, and it also doesn't escalate like other stories do. But here we go. So I go to university and work as a game master in an escape room as a side gig. It's the best freaking job I ever had, though it can be stressing if we're fully booked. We're usually working alone as we only have 2 rooms and one game master can do 2 rooms at once. A week before the incident happened, I bought something to replace a part that was destroyed by one of our groups, and I paid with my own money. A few days later, I wasn't scheduled but was nearby and decided to go into our office and take my money out of the cash register and also bring the replacement part I bought. Now comes the part you're here for. We're 8 people on our team. I've met 6 of them and I'm the 7th. Usually we see each other when one person's shift ends and another one's begins. Also, we all see each other once a month in a team meeting where we discuss important things. We don't have to attend those meetings, but we get free food if we do. However, I still haven't seen one of my 7 coworkers, and he hasn't seen me either. He tends to work very rarely and doesn't have time for team meetings. We'll call him D. So I'm just walking into the office and no one is there. I assumed that the game master was just busy cleaning up one of our rooms. Have in mind, I had no idea which one of us had a shift that day. I sit down, open the cash register, and begin to take the money out. That's the moment where D stepped into the office and we both looked at each other extremely confused, since we had no idea who the other one was and why the other one was in the office. We both could have been random dudes in the office. I was in a much worse position as I was an unknown person taking money out of the cash register. D goes, who are you and what are you doing? Who are you? I'm the game master. My name isn't relevant to you. Yes, it is. I'm the game master too. Followed by 10 seconds of silence. Imagine the Spider-Man meme with the 2 Spider-Men looking at each other. That was us. I say to him, I'm original poster. I don't know who that is. I think we're coworkers. I bought this replacement part for one of our rooms and came by to get my money back. When he realized I know what I'm talking about, he also realized that I wasn't a robber and calmed down. He let me take my money and I drove off. A couple of weeks later, we met again at one of our team meetings and had a great laugh about it. I think we've all had moments like this. I've absolutely been new at a job and addressed someone who worked there as a customer or something like that because I just don't know who they are. It's a totally understandable situation. And yeah, it's a little awkward when you guys meet when you're taking cash out of the register and you're not supposed to be there. But hey, at least you sorted it all out and there was no real drama or issues involved. Could have gone down a whole lot worse if this guy was a lot more aggressive or something like that. Thankfully, rational heads seem to intervene on this one, and there was no violence or anything that ensued. I don't know why you didn't just wait until your next shift to get it, but hey, maybe you needed the money right then and there. I don't know. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.